My name is Erica Diaz.
My name is Francisco Mendez.
My name is Daniel Andrade.
My name is Alejandro Esquivel.
My name is Maclovio Vega.
To keep our culture alive, I would say that having most of our family around is very helpful because I still get invitations to all my cousins and distant cousins parties and any family event that occurs, we all get together and everyone speaks Spanish and eats the Mexican food and it's not something that I can just forget. But at the same time, I think most of my family has acclimated to the way of life and to living in Wisconsin and adapted well to the culture here, but still proud of where we came from.
So my mom is conservative, so she always likes to live the way she would live in back home. So she keeps a lot of her traditions. She would used to like make our typical dishes or communicate the way she would in our home country. So that's how she keeps it alive, and we everybody else does because how we that's what was ingrained in us.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, yeah, keeping our culture alive. Um, Both my parents, they were instrumental in that, making sure that we did not lose our identity. So I grew up English for me is a second language. Both my parents, I mean, growing up there, English was definitely not very strong for them. They both think accents, more comfortable speaking Spanish. So I grew up speaking Spanish first. Um, but one thing, man, both my mom and dad both took classes in English, both made it a point and made it a priority to learn English. And, you could say, um, making sure that um, we all as a family, make sure that we're able to communicate and communicate well in English. But they also made sure that it was important that we don't lose the language. We don't lose our heritage. We don't lose our identity. Part of that is being able to speak Spanish. And I asked my mom why was that something that was important to her, and the basic answer is she wanted me to be able to talk to my grandma, right? So no, she didn't. She wanted me to be able to have a conversation with my grandma. Same thing that my dad said. He's like, your grandma's not going to learn English, right? So I want you to have a good relationship with your grandparents. But I know today they're like, well, yes, Spanish is very important and it can be very useful, and it has been, and it's been something that I'm grateful for, having being able to be bilingual. But it was interesting that I maybe just had this conversation not too long ago, maybe a few months ago, talking about the importance of keeping that alive, keeping the language there. It's something that I actually do with my own kids. So main reason is that my kids are going to a bilingual school here in the Milwaukee Public Schools is mainly because we wanted them to be able to communicate in Spanish with their own relatives and not lose that identity.
So my family really kept their roots by being in Milwaukee and tied to Mexico. They would tell us the traditions. It's interesting that there's a book that a historian wrote in Waukesha called Latinos in Waukesha. So my dad's family, the Vasquez family, was one of the first five Hispanic families to reside in Waukesha. And actually, if you look at this book, my father's baby picture is in this book. And so I think that growing up with that type of family and roots, you have a sense of our traditions. My father would always allude to what his parents did for Christmas and instill that in our holidays as well. And going forward, I've carried those into my family as well with my son and my wife as well.
So my family kept my culture alive in numerous ways. One thing that we would always do is that every Thanksgiving and Christmas, like people have their turkey and have their normal assortments, but we would always instill our rice or our tamales or our tortillas. We would always have these available, and those would go a lot quicker than like the average turkey or that type of stuff. So that was one way that we kept our culture alive. Another way is that we would still, my grandparents still kept up the language, and I would practice being, the language with them. So I would make sure that I, could understand what they were saying, and they could understand what I was saying, and I had enough of familiarity with the language in order to keep that culture alive.
So how did we make sure we didn't lose our culture, right? As I mentioned, in Racine and in Kenosha, the Latino population just wasn't that big in the 80s and 70s. It was there, but it wasn't that big. But a few ways that we kept our culture, at least the way my parents allowed us to keep our culture, was one, we attended Spanish Mass. So we'd go to church, it'd be in Spanish, and there'd be other Latinos, and we'd all be speaking Spanish still. Kenosha did have a Spanish center, like a community center, where Latinos, the ones that were in the area, could go and hang out and, meet each other, have potluck. And we usually met there after church. That was in Kenosha. The other thing my mom did was she never discouraged us from speaking Spanish. All right? She never told me, hey, Maclovio, you should go by Mike and have an Anglo name. She never told my brother Jaime, go by Jamie. We never anglicized our names. We kept our true, original birth names, and which are pretty ethnic, Maclovio, Jaime, Javier. And so, by doing that, it helped us keep our culture. So we didn't assimilate. We did, we acclimated and we learned the culture here in the U.S. We had help, but we kept our culture alive as well. Oh, and like I said, during holidays and cookouts, birthday parties, we had our tortillas, our piñatas, our culture as well.
I would say it's probably as far as defining success in my work environment. I probably mix the both my dad's definition or how he sort of helped me appreciate what he would consider successful in terms of like working hard and having good strong work ethic and how my mom defines success, which is really probably kind of a mix of like being a servant leader, right? Being a leader that is has a lot of compassion, a lot of empathy, towards the people that they work with and that they lead. I think to me it's a mix of both. I mean, I feel like there is a very good part of being when you're successful. You are working hard, but you're having fun doing it, and you enjoy what you're doing, and you're helping others.
So how I value success in my career is just, honestly being in corporate America, to be here at the table with so many talented individuals and to see your ideas implemented. To me, success isn't about a monetary amount of money that I make in my salary. It's more about contributing to the company's strategic vision and growth. And the value that I would say that I value in success is being able to help other individuals in their career and help them become successful. Because I want to be where I am today for my mentors. If I can pay that back to individuals and help them climb the corporate ladder or help them in the nonprofit sector, they can really, honestly, I look at their success and I feel very proud of what they have achieved. the values that my family has instilled in me is honestly a big one is faith. A second one is hard work and determination. A third one is being able to take that constructive feedback and develop it and turn it into a positive. And I think that returning back to your community and actually giving back to the community in ways that you never thought you could. And so, myself and some friends, we do mentor kids in the community who are from underprivileged areas and trying to show them of successes and careers, what they can do with college, be it a 4-year institution or a junior college. That's what they've instilled in me.
I would define success in the work environment as creating creating a purpose. Um, you're contributing in ways that you feel are necessary and you feel are uh, intentional in order to create a better mission for you and for generations to come. Uh, this can be in setting a new tone or even updating the tone of previous generations. Um, this could be in, you know, I define success in the work environment is if you are truly doing what you believe is the right decision for your generation, for yourself, and for your more generations to come, then that is your success.
How do I define success in my work environment? I would say it's tied to how we viewed success in our family. Within our family, success was we all rose together. All right, it didn't do any good in our family, and this includes my aunts and my cousins. You know, we all had to combine to take care of ourselves. I remember when my mom first moved to Kenosha, for example, and it was just her and at the time me and my two brothers, so four of us. You know, her sister took us into her apartment. It was a 2-bedroom apartment, and my aunt, her husband, and their 2 little kids took my mom and her 3 kids it was a very crowded apartment, but it was so that my mom could get on her feet, get a new place, and succeed. Right, so my mom wasn't on the street with me and my brothers. I was like, without questioning it, my aunt said, yes, you can come live with us until you get on your feet, so that you can succeed. And that's how we grew up. I didn't, you don't want to let one of your family members fail. If you can all succeed together, that's better. And I feel that in my work environment, that's how it has to go. It should go as well. If one of us fails, that's not an option. We all have to succeed together. We all have to help each other. No questions asked. If somebody is in need of help and isn't asking, then get in there and help them up. And I'd say, that's to me what defines success is all of us getting there together.
It's how my family's view on education is very it's hard to describe for me because I think I was one of the first people that went to that finished the went on to college after high school in my family, and I think the expectation was at that point that you finish high school and then you work, and that was really what was expected of me. But then I finished high school and it wasn't enough, and I had to continue on because I saw the limitations that not going on to college would bring on. And I tried to do that for my niece and nephew and my son, of course, making sure that they go to college and that they understand how important it is to receive an education, not just so that you can get a job, but so that you can make more informed decisions, and so that you can have a critical improve your critical thinking skills.
Yeah, it was. I mean, my like I said, my mom is, in terms of her, well, both my parents. Well, let's just say, how they valued education. that message of how important education is to your success, and your future success. I think it's something that my mom impressed upon us more so than my dad. But I think, and not to say that she valued it more, but I think through the things that she did, as far as going to school, being able to get more opportunities, and able to actually see things realized, like her own, through her own actions, she made it very clear to us that that is the key, to you unlocking doors. So yeah, it was all her, impressing that upon us.
So I think the expectation was that all three brothers would complete at least high school, and I think that was my dad's proudest moment in his life. And the way that he defined greatness is one generation being better than what he had. And so both of my brothers were able to become police officers with Milwaukee Police Department with just a high school diploma. When I came out of high school, I wasn't a traditional student, so I decided to take a year or two off. And I wanted to really find myself and really figure out what I wanted to do. And I remember one day I went to go work in a steel mill and I was pouring steel, iron. And I remember coming home one day and it was pretty difficult. And my dad looked at me and said, Jesus, what's wrong? And I remember telling him that I don't know how my dad did labor work for 30 years. I don't know if I could do that. And so he really told me about that I have to go back to school, but I didn't have the means and I didn't know the network how to get to school. So I remember a friend that I grew up on the South Side who actually works at Northwestern Mutual. His name is Jose Fuentes, and he introduced me to people at Whitewater with a program called the Educational Opportunity Program, where it was for low income first generation students. And so I was granted admittance into Whitewater based on those parameters. And then I decided to study economics and marketing.
My family's attitude towards education is it creates a lot more opportunity for someone if they're looking to better their life or if they're looking to have more options. Colleges and higher education is the route that is the quickest way there.
Yeah, absolutely. My mom was a very hard worker, working, she worked all the traditional immigrant jobs along my dad, when they both came up here. And, she was a maid at Marriott. She worked in the fields. She worked in a plant where they killed and processed ducks. She worked in a egg plant, hatchery plant. She did all the brutal jobs. And one of the jobs I remember, one of the last jobs I remember her having was she worked making tools at an industrial company in Racine. She would make tools, and in making these tools made out of metal, she would come home with metal splinters in her hands, and I mean, a lot of them, and her hands were always beat up. And to me, when I would see that, and I'd see her come home tired, and that was one of her jobs, and she'd have another one. In her head, and the conversations were, yeah, I don't want this for you. Not that nothing wrong with the job, but she's like, we need to, make sure you can do better than this, so that you're not, having to bloody yourself and work some of these very tough jobs. And I did, in high school, I did actually, I did the dishwasher work. I was a busboy. I actually was a paper boy. That was my first job. I delivered newspapers when little kids could still, in the morning go and throw newspapers out. And that was all that work ethic. God, how old was I? 10 years old. And that was all because of her, how much she worked. I'm like, well, if she's working 2 jobs, least I can do is go deliver some newspapers. And so those jobs were so tough, and seeing her struggle pushed us to get to that college, to get to that white collar, desk job.